Welcome back, Life Science learners. We're continuing with our revision lesson on nutrition. I trust that you're now able to reflect on some of the concepts and apply that in our activities. Let's go and try some of that. I hope that you can attempt to answer these questions, write them down as we work through and reflect on your answers. Let's get straight into that. Activity 1. Study the diagram of the digestive system and answer the questions that follow. Guys, we often know that in a question based on the digestive system that it is important that you understand the digestive system. So here we've got the digestive system and we've got to label the parts, which is most probably going to be the next question. Let's look at that. So question 1, as anticipated, provide labels for parts labeled A to K, 11 marks. Well guys, sometimes in an exam or in an assessment, the examiner might ask you to label a few parts. But I often advise my learners is, if you see a whole lot of parts that are labeled, if you can quickly annotate that diagram, or in other words, write down the parts as soon as you see some labels on them, it does help you as you get into the rest of the question when you have to refer to the diagram and respond to parts that have been indicated with alphabets. So let's label this diagram, and as we go through that, it will help us to recollect the structure of the digestive system, and hopefully that can remind you of the importance of using diagrams to learn important processes like in the digestive system. So as we look at this diagram, we can see various parts that have been labeled. So I'm going to encourage you to assist me as we do this. So A points to this tube that connects to the stomach, and that's the tube that we refer to as the esophagus. And guys, remember that this is where the process of the bolus, which is that ball of food, moves down through a process called peristalsis. Label line B points to this organ here, which is a muscular organ, and that organ is the stomach. It is in the stomach that the first process of chemical digestion of proteins begin. The food then mixes with the gastric juices and moves down the first part of the small intestine, which is labeled C. And that is the small intestine, but specifically the duodenum. And it's important that you guys are able to differentiate the different parts of the small intestine. Namely, the first part being this C-shaped structure called the duodenum, the middle part called the jejunum, and then the last bit, which is the ileum, which connects to the large intestine. Right, so let's move on to the next part. D points to this leaf-like shaped structure, and that is the pancreas. And if we recollect the function of the pancreas, it plays an important role in the production of enzymes along with hormones. And both of these play an important role in digestion as well as maintaining homeostasis in terms of the balance of blood sugar levels in the body. E points to the large intestine, and that's the colon. And if you want to be very specific, this part is specifically the descending colon. So I'm going to put that in brackets. So it's the descending colon, essentially pointing to that part that is taking the waste products down. E points to the middle bit of the small intestine, and that is the jejunum, and that's the middle bit of the small intestine. Let's go further down. E points to the last part of the large intestine called the rectum, and that is where food or the waste products are temporarily stored. And we have H, which is the opening of the alimentary canal, where the process of egestion happens, and that is pointing to the anus. Guys, we then see I, which again points to part of the large intestine which is taking the waste products now further up, and that is the ascending. So again, climbing up, so moving up is the ascending colon. And then if we go further up to J, J points to this little structure here, which is an extension from the liver, and that's the gall bladder, and that is the structure in which the bile, which is produced by the liver, is temporarily stored. And finally, we have structure K, which is this triangular shaped structure in close proximity to the stomach, which is called the liver. So guys, in this simple activity, we were able to review the different parts. Remember that the digestive system contains a whole lot of parts that are important for food to move through, but along with that, we have the accessory organs such as the liver, the gallbladder, the pancreas, which produce substances that are important in assisting the digestive system in carrying out what we refer to as the complete process of chemical digestion. Right, so again, I've enlarged that diagram for your benefit. Let's move on to some more questions based on this diagram. Give the letter of the structure that produces bile. And as you noted, as I went through labeling these parts, I was able to very quickly recollect the structure and function of different parts. So we mentioned producing bile. Guys, remember that the liver produces the bile. However, it is stored and released temporarily from the gallbladder. So give the letter of the structure, guys. So please do not give the name, because the examiner or the assessor is trying to establish if you are able to identify from the diagram which is the part, and hence it's important that you now answer the question. So the letter that produces the bile, again, it's the liver that produces the bile, and the structure that is pointing to the liver is structure K. Controls blood glucose level. Guys, we spoke about the importance of the pancreas in producing hormones, and these hormones play an important role in regulating the blood glucose level. So in this diagram, that's the pancreas, and it is labeled with the letter D. So the structure that is labeled D is the pancreas, in this case, controlling blood sugar levels. A few more. Give the letter of the structure that absorbs most nutrients. So guys, remember that the absorption of nutrients happens in the small intestine. So that's going to be letter F. And so that is where the jejunum absorbs most of the nutrients that have been chemically digested as they move into the duodenum and the middle part of the small intestine. Absorbs most of the water. And guys, the last part of the alimentary canal, which is the colon, absorbs most of the water. And most of that water is absorbed in the ascending colon. So you could put down the letter I for that option. Okay. Question 3. Name the structure where chyme can be found. Guys, the concept of chyme again comes up from our understanding of terms. Remember, we spoke about the food that moves into the stomach, and that mixes with the gastric juices. Once that mixture is produced, it moves from the stomach into the small intestine. So when it is mixed in the stomach, that mixture of gastric juices with food is called chyme. So the structure where chyme is found is the stomach, and in this case it's labeled with the letter B. Okay. Guys, with the stomach behind me, I think you need a little break. Let's grab some energy, get in some calories into that stomach, and then we get back and we'll focus on a few more revision questions. See you in a little bit.